Hello and welcome to iGCSE Success. If you're new here, a big hello to you. I'm an English teacher and I post content here on YouTube to prepare students for their Cambridge First Language English exam. And if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to check out the videos on my channel because I break down a number of the core skills needed to succeed with First Language English. So today's video is all about question 3, that extended writing response worth 25 marks. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, you really need to get this question right. You really have to nail it because it can make or break your grade. And today we'll be looking at how to transform the ideas from an article into a piece of journal writing. So if you're new to the First Language English course or you simply want to sharpen your question 3 skills, be sure to watch the whole video, and as always leave questions and feedback below. So let's not waste any more time and let's get straight into today's video. Hi guys, so I want to, treat this video as a mini learn with me video, and if you've seen my previous videos where I do this, I always encourage you to grab a pen, a notebook, whatever you have to write on, because I like to provide you with an opportunity to have a go at the activities within, so do feel free to have a go and post any work in the comments below. So let's just remind ourselves of what is expected of question 3. Of course, if you are not new to the First Language English course, you are welcome to skip ahead. That's absolutely fine. I won't be offended. It is worth 25 marks. It's a lot of marks. And I always say to my students, particularly with those newer questions, those smaller questions that are worth 1 mark, those synonym questions, for example, students can spend a lot of time skimming the text looking for synonyms or looking for the answers to those smaller questions, and they often forget that they have a question 3 to answer, which is now bolted on at the end. It used to be question 1, and you really need to be conscious, fully aware that this is worth 25 marks and it could potentially make or break your end result. And of course, 15 marks are available for the content and 10 marks for the quality of your writing, which I still find unusual to this day. It is a writing question, but you get more marks for, your reading skills than you do with your writing and your style. So let's just start by reading this bulleted list. So what is required of this question? You select ideas from a text first and foremost. You develop them relevantly. You use an appropriate voice / register for the genre. Of course, the register for a journal is going to be very different to, say, a formal report. You provide a clear and balanced response, which must cover all 3 bullet points equally. You write a well-sequenced response, ensuring it is in your own words, more on that later, and you use precise vocabulary and effective sentence structures to help create a convincing voice. So if you watch the whole video, hopefully by the end you should have achieved 3 things. The first one being to revise the correct approach to question 3. You will have examined a model piece of writing looking at how it follows the steps I will outline in this lesson. And if you are learning along with me, hopefully some of you at least should have written part of a question 3 style response using a range of appropriate features. And feel free to post those responses in the comments below. I'm sure they will be very helpful to people who are new to the First Language English course. So let's break down the steps for answering question 3 successfully. I've said it time and time again. It is a difficult question. It is doable. It just takes a lot of practice and you really need to be confident with the different steps. There are a number of approaches, to question 3. However, let's look at the approach that I get my students to use, and come the end, they often get it. They know how to approach question 3. So first of all, let's look at preparing to answer the question. So you've got question 3 in front of you. What do you do? Well, first and foremost, you must, of course, read the question carefully and you must identify the tap. Of course, the text type will be identified clearly. It will be in the question. You have to write a letter, an article, a speech, etc. However, what is more important, I guess, is to identify the audience and purpose correctly. The audience and purpose, of course, will influence your language choices and your stylistic choices you decide to use to create that convincing voice or register. And of course, once you've identified the tap, you are then ready to read the first bullet point. You read the text, you locate 5 pieces of information, you highlight those things, you repeat that step for the second and third bullet point. And certainly if you are not new to the first language English course, you'll know that the third bullet point particularly is quite difficult because you have to often infer a lot, read between the lines to get the information that Cambridge is after. So answering the question, you need to write your piece using an appropriate style, voice, register, whatever you want to call it. I think that's why formal reports and newspaper reports are particularly challenging for students because, well, A, they don't get as much practice in the classroom as other text types, and B, it requires a certain level of formality to, I guess, writing them successfully. Number 2, you have to use a range of typical and stylistic features. I guess what I mean by typical, let's have a look at newspaper reports, for example. You would have the 4 W's, you would have a title, you would have direct speech, reported speech, you would write in the past tense, you would use a passive voice, etc. These are typical features that belong to newspaper report writing. When I refer to stylistic features, you may know them as language features or sometimes persuasive features. I use the acronym A Ripe Forest. I have done a video on the A Ripe Forest techniques. Be sure to check that out. A little plug there. Number 3, use effective vocabulary and sentence structures. I mean, for all of the text types, you are getting 10 marks for your writing. Vocabulary, sentence structures, stylistic devices, etc. You are going to get marks for any choices that you use for effect. Number 4, make sure quotes are reworded. And I say reworded with a pinch of salt. More on that later. And of course, develop each quote relevantly. And again, more on that on the next slide, I think. So today's text type is a journal. But what exactly is a journal? Well, a journal allows people to share their thoughts and feelings. They often include a date. They are self-reflective. They use that first-person voice. They usually adopt a chronological approach. They are usually informal. And the language is often quite colloquial and creative. By colloquial, I mean they often adopt a chatty style, and they are often written in the past tense. However, you can also use present tense to bring certain events to life. I think the text types which I guess are a little bit more creative, ones that ask you to assume a particular character, journal, speech, sometimes articles, they can be quite hard in the sense that you have to create, yes, often you have to create this engaging voice, but students have this tendency to slip into this really lackluster way of writing. You want your writing to be exciting. You want there to be this clear voice created. And I guess you do that successfully through using a variety of different stylistic choices. And I will go through some effective features you could perhaps use in your next journal piece. Again, this is not a definitive list. It always depends on the audience and purpose. But today's journal writing task is particularly chatty, informal. So these are just some features that perhaps you could consider if you were given a similar task. So chatty, informal, colloquial language. Appropriate fillers to create an authentic voice. Well, I mean, so avoid fillers, particularly for interview tasks. I know students in the past, certainly with scripts I have marked, they've used fillers such as we want to avoid those kind of fillers. However, these fillers on the screen arguably create an authentic voice. They create a sense of character. Hyperbole, so exaggeration. Humour, sarcasm. Idioms, because everyone loves a good idiom. Rhetorical questions and hyperphora. Now, hyperphora is very similar to a rhetorical question. The only difference is that it's answered straight away. So an example might be, do I think I eat a lot of chocolate? Absolutely. Repetition, emotive language, and of course varying your sentence structures. All of these things together can really help create an authentic voice and a successful journal entry. And I will be showing you how to do that on the next slide. So I want to briefly talk about idioms, and those of you who perhaps are not first language English speakers will appreciate how confusing and I guess odd idioms can be. However, they are a feature of authentic speech or everyday speech. We use them all the time. I use them all the time in the classroom, perhaps a little bit too much. My students tell me off all the time. And they can be a really useful tool to creating a sense of character, a sense of voice. They are very useful, I guess, for interview writing tasks, but also journal writing tasks. Here are just a few. Do you know what they mean? Hit the hay. Up in the air. Stabbed in the back. Takes two to tango. Kill two birds with one stone. Bite the bullet. Go back to the drawing board. The last straw. Birds of a feather flock together. I'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And as with all of these features, striking the right balance is key. You don't want to write any text type with idioms littered throughout your whole piece. You can also bring your writing to life by using hyperbole. Hyperbole simply means to exaggerate. I guess a gross exaggeration. And again, we use hyperbole all the time. Some examples are, I've told you to clean your room 1,000,000 times. I have a ton of homework. If I get a detention, I'm laughing because I hear this all the time. I'm going to die. I haven't had breakfast. I'm starving. Sorry. You know, I tell my students off all the time for not proofreading their work, and there you have it. I haven't had breakfast. Of course, that's supposed to be had. Now, the important part, how to transform quotations. The text that we are going to look at, it's an article, and although you are often given a piece of narrative writing, who knows when Cambridge is going to throw a spanner in the works and give you a piece of non-fiction. So we are going to be looking at how to transform the ideas from an article into a journal. And the task is, imagine you are a student preparing for your exams. Write a journal describing how you are feeling. And the 3 bullet points are the academic pressures you are under, your thoughts and feelings about exams, and lastly, how you would change the way schools operate if given the chance. And I just want to say this is a completely made up question. For me personally, I like to start with skills and activities such as this one, just because presenting students who are, I guess, new to the first language English course with a question 3, it can be quite intimidating, it can be quite off-putting and daunting. So hopefully this will be a little bit more manageable and you will be able to see the process and the steps that we need to take to answer a question 3 successfully. So let's read the article. For young people today, Pressures are in plentiful supply. These come in the form of academic pressures, social pressures, and economic pressures, and often we cruelly inflict even worse anxieties upon ourselves. Take academic pressures, for example. We are constantly bombarded by stress from all sides. Teachers telling us to work harder, parents telling us to do better, older siblings telling us how well they did at school, making us feel that we are worthless in comparison. It's soul destroying. Revising for exams whilst trying to get enough sleep, drink 8 glasses of water a day, eat 5 portions of fruit and veg, and have some kind of a social life is challenging enough without constantly being made to feel inadequate compared to others. My brother seems to have forgotten that 40% of his science grade came from coursework, work he was able to edit and improve with the help of his teachers. Teenagers today have no such opportunity. We're on our own, in an exam hall, everything riding on one test, on one day. Doesn't seem fair, does it? Now, I just want to draw your attention to the 4 bullet points on the right. And I want to stress the first one in particular, well, all of them actually. I'm just going to read these bullet points out. So, students lose a lot of marks every year because they lift words or phrases from the original text. And I will explain more about that on the next slide. Your job is to transform the words of the text, be it non-fiction or fiction, into your own using an appropriate style of whatever given text type it is. However, it's not enough just to do this. You should make suitable developments for each quotation you use. And of course, you may find yourself inferring a lot more for the last bullet point. That can always be quite tricky. So we are just going to focus on the first bullet point, and that is to find information about the academic pressures of school. So some of the quotes I have highlighted are: we are constantly bombarded by stress from all sides, teachers telling us to work harder, revising for exams whilst trying to get enough sleep, drink 8 glasses of water a day. Teenagers today have no such opportunity, and everything is riding on one test. Now, where students lose a lot of marks from is they lift from the text. So let's take the first example I've highlighted. We are constantly bombarded by stress from all sides. I read this every single year. I read this every time I mark a question 3, but lifting from the text, it would sound something like this. Today has been really difficult at school. I have been constantly bombarded by stress from my teachers. Of course, you would be expected to reword where appropriate. And I say reword with a pinch of salt. This is not a task to find a synonym for every single word. Okay, you are not being asked to find a synonym for constantly, for bombarded, for work harder, necessarily. What you need to do is understand what the main point is. Once you understand what the main point is, then you are able to write your piece. So let's go through the text one more time before looking at the model. So we are constantly bombarded by stress from all sides. Have a think about what the main idea is behind that quotation. Well, teachers and parents, of course, are pushing students too much. As a result, they are feeling stressed. That is the main idea, and that is the idea that we want to get in our piece. Likewise, teachers telling us to work harder. There is a lot of pressure put on students, almost a burden. They feel overwhelmed, they feel overworked, they feel like they are not getting the praise that they deserve. Revising for exams whilst trying to get enough sleep, drink 8 glasses of water a day. I guess school life and studying consumes students' lives so much that they are not able to take care of themselves. They are not able to fuel their bodies adequately. Those are the ideas that we need to write about. Teenagers today have no such opportunity. Coursework has been taken away from many students. Lastly, everything riding on one test. So there's this pressure put on students because of one high stakes test in which students have to do. Right, let's take a look at the model, and I want you to think about how I have created a realistic voice, how I have created a suitable tone for a journal entry, and where I would get my reading marks. I always tell my students to spend a couple of lines establishing a sense of purpose, establishing that voice. So you'll notice that I'm not desperately grabbing for reading marks straight away. I'm focusing on writing marks and style. Let's take a read. 7th of March 2021. Do you know what's particularly tough when you are young? Trying to juggle this crazy thing called life with school. Here I am again, burning the midnight oil so that I won't crumble on the day of my exam. Of course, no reading marks there, but you would get marks for your writing. How have I created a suitable voice? Well, you've got that phrase, here I am again. You've got that idiom, burning the midnight oil so that I won't crumble on the day of my exams. You would get marks for vocabulary as well, emotive language. You've got that verb crumble. You've got that anaphora, hyperphora to open the journal entry with. Do I feel confident? Absolutely not. I don't know what to feel anymore. The strain is getting unbearable. Strain that is exacerbated by my overly supportive parents. I'm just a lazy teen in their eyes. I'm also getting really sick to the back teeth of my teachers telling me to put more effort into my work. I've been knuckling down for what seems like forever. Don't they know how much pressure we are all under? Oh, why don't you study more? It just seems to roll off their tongues so easily. Revision has taken over my life. I barely even have time to fuel my body properly. What even is food? Another thing that really annoys me is the fact that everything comes down to one high-stakes exam. Gone are the days of coursework. My grade is going to be decided on one exam that I don't feel remotely prepared for. I just wish teachers actually knew the pressures we were under. So looking at the stylistic features, we've got rhetorical questions, we've got hyperphora, we've got repetition, we've got emotive language. We've got a variety of sentence structures, all of those used to create a convincing voice in the style of a journal. And I said before, you really need to develop each of your ideas. Let's take one of the quotations I have highlighted. Everything riding on one test. If you look at the last part of my journal entry, it reads, my grade is going to be decided by one exam. There is your reading mark. One exam that I don't feel remotely prepared for. I just wish teachers actually knew the pressures we were under. I have developed that idea relevantly. And that's what you need to do for each quotation. Lastly, hopefully you can see that I have established a sense of purpose, the tap is clear, and as mentioned, I've used a variety of features to create a suitable style, and all quotations have been reworded and developed appropriately. If you feel like having a go at this question, please do. I invite you, I encourage you to post your responses in the comments. As I said before, I'm sure it will be helpful, particularly for those new to the First Language English course.